The mop water was turning a murky gray when I caught my reflection in the pristine glass doors of the executive conference room. Elaine Harper staring back at me, a 28-year-old woman in a gray jumpsuit, with a master's degree in international business tucked neatly inside her cleaning cart. I ran my hand over my face, smudging away a fleck of all-purpose cleaner that had splashed onto my cheek. 3 months into this strategic immersion program at Berkshire Global, and I still flinched every time someone passed me in the hall without a second glance. The invisibility was simultaneously the point and the most difficult part of it all. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Mom again. Third call today. I let it go to voicemail as I wrung out my mop, the muscles in my forearms burning with a fatigue that had nothing to do with physical labor. Last Sunday's dinner still played on a loop in my head. My father's barely contained laughter. My sister Caroline's pitying glances. My brother-in-law's smug suggestion that he might know someone looking for a receptionist. A cleaning lady? My mother had repeated, the word cleaning distorting her features like she'd bitten into something rotten. With your education? What about that fancy degree we paid for? I hadn't bothered explaining. The confidentiality agreement I'd signed was just a convenient excuse to avoid the real conversation, that their expectations for my life had never aligned with my own ambitions. They wouldn't understand what Director Harrington had explained during the interview. At Berkshire Global, we believe exceptional leadership starts from the ground up. Literally. Our strategic immersion program puts promising candidates where corporate culture truly reveals itself, in the margins, the shadows, the places most executives never think to look. As a cleaner, you'll be invisible but omnipresent, gathering intelligence no boardroom meeting could ever provide. It was brilliant, really. For 3 months, I'd been mapping the company's true power dynamics, identifying the informal leaders, the connectors, the influencers that no organizational chart could capture. I'd been cataloging inefficiencies, pinpointing communication breakdowns, and identifying potential talent that management had overlooked. All while being treated like furniture. The sound of rapid footsteps jolted me from my thoughts. I quickly pushed my cart against the wall, making myself small, unobtrusive, as 2 executives rushed past, deep in heated conversation. Mathers is going to bury us if we can't get those projections fixed by morning, the older one hissed. Thomas Whitfield, Chief Financial Officer, known for stress-eating Tums during quarterly reviews. The Singapore data is corrupt. Chen's team is working on it, but the younger one, Daniel Ross, VP of International Markets, recently divorced, always worked late on Wednesdays, ran a hand through his hair. They disappeared around the corner, oblivious to my presence. I made a mental note to add this interaction to my evening report, then continued my rounds. The floor was nearly empty now. 8:47 p.m. Just a few more offices to clean, then I could retreat to my small apartment, compile my observations, and collapse into bed before starting again tomorrow. I pushed my cart toward the last office on my route, Catherine Chen, Director of Asia-Pacific Operations. Her space was always immaculate, as if she cleaned it herself before leaving, which I appreciated. But tonight, light spilled from under her door. I hesitated, then knocked softly. "Come in," called a tired voice. I pushed the door open to find Catherine hunched over her computer, eyes rimmed with exhaustion, papers strewn across her normally pristine desk. "Oh," she looked up, momentarily confused. "I'm sorry, I'll get out of your way." "No rush," I said, keeping my voice neutral, unassuming. "I can come back later." She waved a dismissive hand. "It's fine. I'll be here all night anyway." She gestured toward her screen with frustration. Corrupted data files from Singapore. The entire quarterly projection is off, and the board presentation is tomorrow morning. I hesitated, the mop handle cool against my palm. This was it, the moment every strategic immersion participant was trained to recognize but never force. The delicate intersection of opportunity and invisibility. I couldn't help overhearing Mr. Whitfield and Mr. Ross discussing that earlier. I ventured carefully. Is it a time zone issue with the data transfer protocols? Catherine looked up, really seeing me for the first time, her exhaustion momentarily forgotten. How would you know about data transfer protocols? I adjusted my grip on the mop, conscious of stepping across an invisible boundary. Before this job, I worked with similar systems. Sometimes the Singapore servers use a different timestamp format that corrupts when it syncs with the New York database. Her eyes narrowed slightly. That's exactly what's happening. The numbers are gibberish. I set my mop against the wall, a decision made before I fully realized it. If you'd like, I could take a look. No pressure. For a long moment, Catherine just stared at me, calculation and desperation warring in her expression. Finally, she turned her laptop toward me. I have nothing to lose at this point. 45 minutes later, the data was flowing correctly, the projections rebuilt, and Catherine was looking at me like I'd performed a miracle. How did you learn to do that? She asked, watching as I saved the final spreadsheet and closed the program. I shrugged, already heading back to my abandoned mop. Just something I picked up. No, Catherine said firmly, standing up. No one just picks up advanced data integration protocols. Who are you, really? The moment had come sooner than anticipated. 3 weeks before my official evaluation. I took a breath, weighing my options. My name is Elaine Harper, I said finally. I'm part of Berkshire Global's strategic immersion program. Recognition dawned in her eyes. The Ghost program. I thought that was just a corporate legend. Very real, I assured her, and completely confidential. She studied me for a long moment, then sank back into her chair with a soft laugh. 3 months as a cleaner? That's intense. It's been educational, I said, choosing my words carefully. You learn a lot about a company when you're invisible. Catherine's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then back at me with new respect in her eyes. Whitfield wants to know how I fixed the data issue so quickly. What should I tell him? This was the next test, one that hadn't been covered in my training. The truth, I decided. That you had unexpected help. The rest can wait until after my evaluation period. She nodded slowly. Fair enough. A pause. Though I have to ask, why cleaning? Why not an entry-level office position? Seems unnecessarily difficult. I thought of my family's reactions, of their laughter, their pity, their certainty that I'd failed somehow. People reveal themselves differently around those they think don't matter, I said finally. It's the most honest view of corporate culture you can get. Catherine's expression shifted subtly as my words sank in. Well, she said, standing and extending her hand. I look forward to seeing you in the boardroom, Elaine Harper. I have a feeling you're going to make quite an impression. As I shook her hand, I thought of my upcoming Sunday dinner with my family. Of the stories I still couldn't tell. Of the path I'd chosen, so different from their expectations. That's the plan, I said, and returned to my mop. Some revelations would have to wait a little longer. The next evening found me cleaning the executive restrooms with renewed focus, my encounter with Catherine having both validated and complicated my mission. Officially, I still had 3 weeks left in my immersion period. Unofficially, my cover was now compromised, at least with one director. The bathroom door swung open, and I kept my head down, focusing on scrubbing an already immaculate sink. "Elaine?" Catherine Chen's voice was low, almost conspiratorial. I looked up, meeting her gaze in the mirror. "Ms. Chen." I nodded professionally, mindful of potential listeners. "I wanted to thank you again for your help last night. The presentation went perfectly." I allowed myself a small smile. "I'm glad to hear it." She checked under the stalls to ensure we were alone, then lowered her voice further. "I've been thinking about what you said. About seeing the company differently." A pause. "I'd like to hear more. Perhaps over coffee? Once your evaluation period is complete, of course." The offer surprised me. Executives rarely socialized with those below VP level, let alone someone they'd only just discovered wasn't actually a cleaner. "I'd like that," I replied carefully. Catherine handed me a business card. "My personal number is on the back. And don't worry, your secret is safe with me." After she left, I tucked the card into my pocket, a peculiar mix of caution and optimism building in my chest. Every strategic immersion participant was warned about forming attachments, about revealing themselves prematurely. But they were also encouraged to identify allies, to build connections that could serve them, and the company, in the future. As I finished my shift and headed toward the employee exit, I spotted Thomas Whitfield hovering near the reception desk, his expression thunderous as he berated a young man I recognized as one of the IT specialists. "Don't care what you have to do, just fix it." Whitfield's voice carried across the marble lobby. "If we lose those contracts because of technical incompetence, heads will roll." The IT specialist, Adam, if I remembered correctly, nodded repeatedly, his face flushed with humiliation as other employees exited around them, carefully averting their eyes. I slowed my pace, ostensibly adjusting my backpack but actually making careful mental notes. Whitfield's temper was a known variable, but his targeting of junior staff for systemic failures suggested deeper organizational issues. This interaction would feature prominently in my evening report. As I finally pushed through the revolving door into the cool evening air, my phone vibrated. Another missed call from my mother, and a text from my sister Caroline. "Mom's planning Sunday dinner again. Says you have to come this time. Dad wants to talk sense into you about this cleaning job. Please don't make me play mediator again." I sighed, pocketing my phone without responding. In 3 weeks, I could finally tell them the truth. Until then, I'd have to endure their judgment, their certainty that I'd made a catastrophic mistake. The train ride to my apartment in Queens was crowded with the usual mix of commuters, office workers scrolling mindlessly on their phones, students with headphones blasting thinly contained music, service workers like me, bone-tired but relieved to be heading home. Except I wasn't really a service worker. I was a corporate spy of sorts, gathering intelligence while disguised as someone society had trained people to ignore. The ethical complexity of it wasn't lost on me, but neither was the value of the perspective it provided. My apartment was small but functional, a studio with a decent kitchen and a view of the brick wall of the adjacent building. Not exactly the luxury condo my parents had envisioned for their Ivy League-educated daughter, but it served my needs during this transitional period. I kicked off my shoes and headed straight for my laptop, eager to document the day's observations while they were still fresh. My reports were submitted daily to Director Harrington via an encrypted channel, with strict instructions not to include names or specifics that could identify individuals, only patterns, systems, and culture markers. Tonight's report would be different, though. I had to disclose my interaction with Catherine Chen, the premature revelation of my identity. It was a deviation from protocol, one that could potentially affect my final evaluation. As I typed, a memory surfaced, my final interview for the Strategic Immersion Program, sitting across from Director Harrington in her meticulously organized office. The hardest part isn't the physical labor, she'd warned, her gray eyes sharp and assessing. It's maintaining the cognitive dissonance. You'll be simultaneously part of the organization and separate from it. Observing while participating. Hidden in plain sight. I'd nodded, confident in my ability to compartmentalize, to maintain the necessary professional distance. And your family? She'd asked, catching me off guard. How will they handle your apparent career detour? I'd hesitated then, knowing my parents' expectations, their definition of success that had always felt slightly too rigid for me. They'll be concerned, I'd admitted. Confused, probably. But I don't need their approval. Director Harrington had studied me for a long moment. Good, she'd finally said. Because seeking approval is the enemy of clear observation. Remember that, Ms. Harper. Now, as I finished my report and submitted it, I wondered if I'd truly taken that lesson to heart. Was I still seeking approval, just from different sources? From Catherine Chen, with her unexpected alliance? From Director Harrington, with her cryptic evaluations? From colleagues who didn't even know my real purpose yet? My phone buzzed again, another text from Caroline. If you don't respond, I'm coming to your apartment. You know I'll do it. With a groan, I picked up the phone. Fine. I'll be there Sunday. But I'm not discussing my job. 3 little dots appeared immediately. Good luck with that. Mom's already rehearsing her intervention speech. I tossed the phone onto my bed and headed for the shower, letting the hot water rinse away the day's physical and emotional residue. In 3 weeks, everything would change. I just had to hold the line a little longer. Yet as I stood under the spray, I couldn't help wondering, was I really as invisible as I thought? Or had Catherine Chen simply been the first to truly see me? And what would happen when everyone else finally did too? Sunday arrived with the inevitability of a slow-motion car crash. I stood outside my parents' Tudor-style home in Westchester, gathering courage like armor. Through the bay window, I could see them already gathered, my father in his usual armchair, poring over what was probably the Wall Street Journal, my mother flitting about, adjusting flowers that didn't need adjusting, Caroline and her husband Michael seated on the sofa, their twin boys playing on the carpet. The picture-perfect family, with one problematic piece, me. Before I could press the doorbell, the door swung open to reveal Caroline, her expression a familiar mix of exasperation and relief. Finally, she hissed, pulling me inside. Mom's been watching the window for 20 minutes. What took you so long? The train was delayed, I lied, having actually spent 30 minutes walking circles around the block, rehearsing responses to the interrogation I knew awaited me. Elaine. My mother swooped in, embracing me with the particular tension she reserved for disappointments she was trying to overlook. You look thin. Are they working you too hard with all that, cleaning? And there it was, the first jab, not even 5 seconds after I'd crossed the threshold. The work is fine, Mom, I said evenly, extricating myself from her grip. My father looked up from his paper, peering at me over his reading glasses. Elaine, he nodded, his tone neutral but his eyes radiating disapproval. Dad. I returned the nod, already calculating how soon I could reasonably leave without causing a scene. Aunt Ellie. My nephews, 5-year-old terrors with angelic faces, barreled into me. I crouched to hug them, grateful for their uncomplicated affection. "Boys, careful," Caroline chided, though her smile was genuine. "Aunt Ellie might be tired from work." I shot her a warning look, which she pretended not to see. Come, dinner's almost ready," my mother urged, ushering everyone toward the dining room. "Michael, would you open the wine? We got that Cabernet you like." As we settled around the ornate dining table, my father at the head, my mother at the foot, Caroline and Michael on one side, me alone on the other, I felt the familiar weight of expectations descend like a physical presence. The conversation remained superficial through the first course. Caroline's boys were starting a new soccer program, Michael had received a promotion at his investment firm, my mother's garden club was planning a charity event. Normal, pleasant family talk that carefully avoided the elephant in the room. Until the main course arrived, and my father set down his fork with deliberate precision. "So, Elaine," he began, his voice deceptively casual, "how much longer do you plan to continue with this cleaning experiment?" I took a slow sip of water, buying time. "It's not an experiment, Dad. Whatever you want to call it," he waved a dismissive hand. "The point is, it's beneath you. Beneath your education, beneath your potential." "Robert," my mother interjected, "we agreed to approach this gently." "Gently isn't working, Margaret," my father retorted. "It's been 3 months. 3 months of her wasting her degree, her connections, everything we've invested in her future." I set my glass down carefully, though what I really wanted was to slam it. "I'm not wasting anything," I said, keeping my voice level. "This job is exactly where I need to be right now." My father scoffed. "A cleaning lady at, what is it, some financial firm? You graduated summa cum laude from Wharton, for God's sake." "It's Berkshire Global," I corrected, "and yes, I'm aware of my own credentials." Michael, never one to miss an opportunity to ingratiate himself with my father, joined in. "You know, Elaine, my firm is always looking for talented analysts. With your background, I could probably get you an interview next week." "Thank you, but I'm not looking for another position," I said, gritting my teeth. "Honey," my mother tried again, her voice taking on that syrupy quality that always preceded her most cutting observations, "we're just concerned. This isn't like you. You've always been so ambitious, so driven. And now suddenly you're scrubbing toilets? It doesn't make sense." "Maybe not to you," I replied, feeling my carefully constructed patience beginning to fray. Caroline, perhaps sensing my growing tension, attempted to redirect. "Mom, the roast is delicious. Did you use a new recipe?" But my father wasn't finished. "Your sister is trying to spare your feelings, but I'm going to be direct. You're throwing away your future, Elaine. Whatever point you're trying to make, whatever quarter-life crisis this is, it's gone on long enough." Something inside me snapped. "Has it occurred to any of you," I said slowly, setting down my cutlery, "that I might know what I'm doing? That perhaps I have reasons you don't understand?" "What reasons could possibly justify," my father began, but I cut him off. "I don't need to justify my choices to you. I'm 28 years old, financially independent, and perfectly capable of making my own decisions." A heavy silence fell over the table. My mother's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her go-to response when direct confrontation failed. My father's face had hardened into the stony expression he reserved for serious disappointments. Caroline looked torn between loyalty to our parents and sympathy for me. Even Michael seemed uncomfortable with the tension, focusing intently on cutting his meat into unnecessarily small pieces. Finally, my father spoke again, his voice lower but no less intense. "We only want what's best for you, Elaine. We've always wanted that. But if you continue down this path, you're on your own. I won't sit by and watch you throw away everything you've worked for, everything we've helped you achieve. It was an ultimatum, clear as day. Fall in line or face exclusion. In that moment, I saw my family with the same clarity I'd been bringing to my observations at Berkshire Global: the power dynamics, the unspoken rules, the penalties for nonconformity. I understand, I said, folding my napkin and placing it beside my half-eaten dinner. And I'm sorry you feel that way. But this is my choice, and I'm standing by it. I stood, ignoring my mother's protesting "Elaine, please," and Caroline's alarmed expression. Thank you for dinner. I'll see myself out. The walk to the train station was long and cold, but I welcomed the physical discomfort as a distraction from the emotional turmoil. My phone buzzed repeatedly in my pocket, probably Caroline, possibly my mother, but I left it unanswered. Director Harrington's words echoed in my mind: seeking approval is the enemy of clear observation. Today had been a harsh lesson in exactly what she meant. Monday morning arrived with a clarity I hadn't expected. The weekend's confrontation with my family, painful as it was, had sharpened my focus. As I donned the gray uniform and gathered my cleaning supplies, I felt more committed than ever to completing my immersion successfully. The office was buzzing with unusual energy when I arrived. Groups of employees huddled in conversation, their voices hushed but excited. I kept my head down, maneuvering my cart toward the first bathroom on my route, ears tuned to the snippets I could catch. Big announcement at the all-hands meeting. Something about a restructuring. Heard Whitfield is furious. Interesting. I made a mental note to position myself near the main conference room during the all-hands meeting. Though technically not invited, cleaners were often present during such gatherings, invisible in the periphery as they emptied trash cans or wiped down surfaces. The morning passed in a blur of routine tasks, my mind cataloging observations on autopilot. At 11:30, employees began migrating toward the main conference room. I timed my rounds to coincide, pushing my cart with deliberate slowness past the open doors. Inside, the room was reaching capacity, executives arrayed at the front, mid-level managers claiming the chairs, junior staff standing along the walls. I spotted Catherine Chen in conversation with CEO James Berkshire himself, her posture alert but relaxed. "Excuse me," a voice behind me said. I shifted my cart closer to the wall, expecting someone to pass. Instead, Director Victoria Harrington herself stood there, her steel gray bob and tailored suit a stark contrast to my utilitarian uniform. "Ms. Harper," she said, her voice low enough that only I could hear. "A moment, please." My heart rate kicked up a notch. Director Harrington never interacted with immersion participants during their field period. It was one of the program's strictest protocols. I followed her to a small meeting room nearby, professional mask firmly in place despite my internal alarm. "I received your report about Director Chen," she said as soon as the door closed behind us. Normally, such a breach would be concerning. I nodded, preparing my defense. But in this case, she continued, surprising me, it's actually quite fortuitous. The timeline has accelerated. "Ma'am?" I questioned, unsure what she meant. Director Harrington gestured to the chair across from her. "Please, sit. What I'm about to share is highly confidential, even within the program." I sat, my curiosity outweighing my apprehension. Berkshire Global is undergoing a significant reorganization, effective immediately, she explained. The Asia-Pacific division is being expanded, with a new emphasis on digital integration, precisely the area where you assisted Director Chen. The announcement today, I realized aloud. She nodded. Yes. And part of that reorganization includes the creation of several new leadership positions. One of which, she paused, studying me carefully, Catherine Chen has recommended you for. I blinked, processing. But my immersion period isn't complete. There's still the evaluation, the transition phase. As I said, the timeline has accelerated. Your intervention with the Singapore data crisis provided an unexpected proof of concept. Your technical skills impressed Chen, but more importantly, your insights about organizational visibility resonated with her on a personal level. I thought of our conversation in the bathroom, of Catherine's interest in seeing the company differently. What position? I asked. Deputy Director of Operational Integration, Director Harrington replied. You'd report directly to Chen, with a focus on streamlining communication and processes between regional offices. It was a significant role, far beyond what most immersion participants secured immediately after their program. But I haven't completed my observation period, I protested weakly. Director Harrington's smile was thin but genuine. Ms. Harper, you've been observing this company more effectively than most executives who've been here for years. Your reports have been exemplary, insightful, nuanced, and actionable. We've seen enough. She stood, smoothing her already immaculate jacket. The all-hands meeting is about to begin. After the general announcements, CEO Berkshire will invite several key personnel to the stage. When he calls your name, simply walk to the front. Your uniform will make quite the statement. My mind raced. My family, they don't know. We'll find out soon enough, she finished for me. Sometimes the most effective revelations are the most dramatic ones. With that, she left me alone in the small room, my heart pounding against my ribs like it was trying to escape. This was it, the culmination of months of invisible work, of enduring judgment and misunderstanding, of maintaining a double identity that had strained my relationships and tested my resolve. In just minutes, I would step onto that stage not as Elaine the cleaner, but as Elaine Harper, Deputy Director. The gray uniform would transform from a disguise into a powerful symbol. And somewhere in Westchester, my family would eventually learn exactly what I'd been doing all this time. With a deep breath, I straightened my jumpsuit and headed for the conference room, ready to become visible at last. The main conference room hummed with anticipation as CEO James Berkshire took the podium, his commanding presence immediately silencing the crowd. I positioned myself near the back wall, mop in hand, the perfect picture of unobtrusive service staff. Good morning, Berkshire Global, he began, his deep voice carrying easily through the space. Today marks a pivotal moment in our company's evolution. He launched into a carefully crafted speech about global market dynamics, digital transformation, and strategic positioning. I'd heard similar corporate rhetoric countless times, but there was a genuine energy behind his words that captured even my critical attention. To navigate these changes effectively, Berkshire continued, we're restructuring key divisions and creating new leadership roles designed to break down traditional silos and foster innovation. I spotted Catherine Chen in the front row, her posture relaxed but attentive. Thomas Whitfield sat nearby, his expression carefully neutral though his tightly clenched jaw betrayed his tension. First, I'm pleased to announce that Catherine Chen will be promoted to Executive Vice President of Global Operations, overseeing both our Asia-Pacific and European divisions. Applause rippled through the room as Catherine rose and joined Berkshire at the podium, accepting his handshake with a poised smile. Thank you, James, she said, taking the microphone. I'm honored by this opportunity and excited about the direction we're heading. She paused, scanning the room. As part of this restructuring, we're creating several new positions designed to bridge operational gaps we've identified in recent months. My pulse quickened. This was it. I'd like to introduce the team who will help lead this transformation, Catherine continued. Daniel Ross will transition to Senior Director of Market Strategy. Meera Patel will become our Chief Digital Officer. Each named executive made their way to the stage amid polite applause. And finally, Catherine said, her eyes finding mine at the back of the room, I'd like to introduce our new Deputy Director of Operational Integration, someone who has been working among us for months, observing our systems and culture from a unique perspective. A curious murmur rippled through the crowd. Elaine Harper, would you please join us? The room fell silent as all heads turned, searching for this unknown person. I set my mop against the wall, squared my shoulders, and began walking toward the stage. The confusion was palpable as employees registered that the woman in the cleaner's uniform was apparently being called to join the executive team. Whispers erupted, shocked expressions bloomed, and a few audible gasps punctuated my journey down the center aisle. I caught Thomas Whitfield's thunderstruck expression, Adam from IT's wide-eyed stare, and countless other reactions ranging from confusion to disbelief to admiration. As I climbed the steps to the stage, Catherine extended her hand, her smile warm and knowing. Ms. Harper has been part of Berkshire Global's strategic immersion program, she explained to the bewildered audience. For those unfamiliar with the program, it places high-potential leaders in non-traditional roles where they can observe company culture and operations without the filter of hierarchy or preconception. CEO Berkshire took the microphone again. What Ms. Chin is too modest to mention is that Elaine single-handedly salvaged our quarterly presentation by identifying and fixing the Singapore data integration issue, all while maintaining her cover as a member of our cleaning staff. More whispers. More shocked faces. I stood tall, surprisingly comfortable in my gray uniform despite being on stage beside immaculately dressed executives. This, Berkshire continued, is exactly the kind of innovative thinking and ground-level insight our company needs to thrive in today's market. Sometimes the most valuable perspectives come from unexpected places. As applause gradually built, hesitant at first, then gaining confidence, I thought of my family's dismissal, their inability to see beyond the surface of my choices. Standing here now, I felt a complex mix of vindication, relief, and a lingering sadness that they hadn't trusted my path even when they couldn't understand it. After the meeting concluded, I was swept into a whirlwind of introductions, congratulations, and curious questions. The same employees who had walked past me for months without a glance now studied me with fascination, eager to understand the observer who had been in their midst all along. I can't believe I complained about my boss to you in the ladies' room, one marketing manager confessed, her cheeks flushed with embarrassment. Don't worry, I assured her, all observations were anonymized in my reports. No names, no specifics, just patterns and systems. Still, she shuddered, it's a little unnerving to think we were being studied. Not studied, I corrected gently. Observed. There's a difference. Before she could respond, my phone buzzed in my pocket, an incoming call from Caroline. News traveled fast, it seemed. I excused myself, finding a quiet corner of the now emptying conference room. Hello? I answered, bracing myself. Elaine? Caroline's voice was high with excitement. Oh my God, is it true? Michael just called, his colleague saw the announcement on Berkshire Global's investor relations page. Deputy Director? A special program? What the actual hell? I couldn't help but laugh at her bewilderment. It's a long story. I bet it is. Why didn't you tell us? Mom and Dad are, well, they're in shock, honestly. Dad's been staring at his computer screen for 10 minutes straight, reading the press release over and over. The image of my father's stunned face brought a small, perhaps petty satisfaction. I wasn't allowed to tell anyone, I explained. Confidentiality was a core component of the immersion experience. But we're family, Caroline protested, though her tone held more curiosity than accusation. Exactly, I replied softly. Which is why it was so important that your reactions to my apparent career choice be genuine. A pause as she absorbed this. We were part of your experiment, she realized. Not an experiment. An observation. I spotted Catherine Chin gesturing to me from across the room. Listen, I have to go. We'll talk more later, okay? You'd better believe it, Caroline said, her voice a mix of indignation and pride. Dinner. Our house. This weekend. And you're telling us everything. I hung up, pocketing my phone and heading toward Catherine, who stood with Director Harrington and CEO Berkshire. There she is, Berkshire greeted me warmly. The woman of the hour. How does it feel to step out of the shadows, Ms. Harper? I considered the question seriously. Validating, I admitted. But also a little disorienting. I've spent months cultivating invisibility. A skill that will serve you well in leadership, Harrington noted. The ability to observe without interrupting, to see patterns others miss because they're too busy being seen. Catherine nodded in agreement. I've already briefed James on some of your insights from the immersion period. Your observation about the disconnect between our digital team and regional operations was particularly insightful. It's easier to spot systemic issues when you're not entrenched in the system, I offered. Precisely why the strategic immersion program has been so successful, Berkshire said. Though I must admit, your particular placement was Victoria's most ambitious experiment yet. Director Harrington's expression remained neutral, but I detected a hint of pride in her eyes. Ms. Harper showed a unique psychological profile. Most candidates prefer roles with at least some perceived status, administrative assistants, mail-room clerks, maintenance. The cleaning staff is entirely ignored by most executives, making it the perfect vantage point for someone with the right mindset. Well, your experiment paid off spectacularly, Berkshire said, checking his watch. Now, I have a board call in 5 minutes. Catherine will help you with the transition details. Your official start date as deputy director is next Monday, which gives you the rest of this week to wrap up your current duties. With a final congratulatory handshake, he departed, leaving me with Catherine and Director Harrington. 1 week, I repeated, slightly dazed. From pushing a mop to the executive team in 7 days. Don't underestimate how valuable your time as a cleaner has been, Catherine said seriously. You've navigated this company from its foundations, witnessed its true culture, not the sanitized version most executives experience. Director Harrington nodded in agreement. Your official orientation begins Thursday. Until then, maintain your current role. The juxtaposition will be instructive for your colleagues. Her eyes held a challenge. And your family? Will adjust, I replied, thinking of my father's stunned expression, my mother's inevitable recalibration of her narrative about me. Some revelations take time to fully process. That evening, as I completed my final cleaning rounds, I experienced the building differently, employees' furtive glances, whispered conversations that ceased as I approached. My invisibility had been replaced by something more complex, curiosity, respect, perhaps even a touch of apprehension. At my small apartment, I found a package waiting, a sleek white box with Berkshire Global's logo. Inside lay a tailored charcoal suit, a cream silk blouse, and a handwritten note from Catherine, for your first day in the boardroom. Though I must admit, I'll miss the jumpsuit's symbolism. Sunday arrived with unusual anticipation. Caroline's dining room felt foreign yet familiar as I entered, no longer the family disappointment but a curiosity they couldn't quite categorize. Deputy Director, my father said, his tone somewhere between apology and pride. I suppose we owe you. I raised my hand, stopping him. You don't owe me anything. We all did exactly what the program required. You reacted honestly to the information you had. My mother arranged silverware with nervous precision. But sweetheart, if we'd known. Then my immersion wouldn't have been authentic, I explained gently. I needed to experience true invisibility, to feel what it means to be dismissed, overlooked. Caroline studied me with new eyes. You've changed. I've clarified, I corrected, accepting the glass of wine Michael offered with unexpected deference. As dinner progressed, I watched my family adjust their understanding of me in real time, their perceptions shifting with each detail I revealed. Some accommodations were graceful, others awkward, but all were genuine. Just like life at Berkshire Global would be, starting tomorrow, messy, complex, and finally, completely visible.